Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
Good morning. Welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting of the November 18, 2024. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. As we have quorum present for today's meeting, I'd like to call this meeting of Public Works Committee to order. Online, we have Councillor John Paul Danko. In chambers, Councillor Jackson Wang, Maureen Wilson, Matt Francis, Jeff Beattie, Craig Kassar, Cameron Crutch, and Alex Wilson. All right, moving on. Elsie McIntosh, any changes to the agenda?
Councillor Spatafora, the following changes were made to the agenda. 6, delegation request. 6.2, Chris Ritzma, respecting 9.1, Ward 1 Victoria Park Solar Compacting Waste Containers Pilot, in person for today's meeting. And 6.3, Chris Ritzma, Cycle Hamilton, respecting item number 9.3, bicycle yield at Idaho Stops, in person for today's meeting. 11, discussion items, Kenilworth Drainage Channel Remediation. The appendix was revised. And item number 13, notices of motion. 13.1, process used to inform the city's planning, execution, and communication of major infrastructure works.
Thank you, Clerk McIntosh. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Wang, Councillor Francis. Any discussion on the agenda as presented? Seeing none, we will go to the vote.
Councillor Pauls, are you able to vote? Thank you.
And that carries 11-0. Thank you. Moving on to ceremonial activities. Just wanted to congratulate here the City of Hamilton and Stantec win the 2024 Project of the Year Award. The North American Society for Trenchless Technology Canadian chapter has recognized the Kenilworth Trunk Water Main Rehabilitation Project with its prestigious 2024 Project of the Year in the rehabilitation category. Continue, and then we'll have a round of applause at the end. The Kenilworth Transmission Water Main, a 1,050 millimeter, 42-inch diameter steel water main constructed around 1960, is a critical component of Hamilton Water's distribution network, serving as one of only 2 transmission mains for the Hamilton Mountain area. The water main required significant rehabilitation due to the severe external corrosion along its 250-meter horizontal section within a 2.44-meter diameter tunnel and a 50-meter vertical section located in a 2.44-meter diameter shaft. City of Hamilton Engineering Services, and I apologize if I get these names wrong, including Harry Krenas, Joe Carecci, Tanya DeCampley, and Donald Putzig, with support from Hamilton Water's plant operations and water distribution team, successfully navigated a series of complex challenges to deliver the project. These include managing seasonal shutdown limitations, addressing safety concerns related to confined space entry, maintaining precise climate control for proper pipe preparation and rehab quality, responding quickly to accelerated deterioration discovered in the vertical section. And that was the last one. Congratulations to the entire team on their dedication, and which led to the successful completion of this critical project. This well-deserved recognition from the NASTT Canadian chapter highlights the team's excellence and commitment to Hamilton infrastructure. Congratulations, team. Moving on to declarations of interest. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go to Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Not a declaration of interest, but in a few minutes I have to leave. A dear friend and longtime associate sadly passed away in the last few days, and the church service is at 10 a.m. up on the West Mountain. So I'm going to leave in a few minutes. I hope to be back before committee adjourns, but in the meantime, I just wanted to explain my absence. Thanks, Chair Spatafora.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Moving on to the approval of minutes of the previous meeting, 4.1, November 4th, 2024. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of that meeting? Councillor Kassar, Councillor Beattie, Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. And the vote is up. Councillor Pauls is a thumbs up. And that carries 12-0. Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Taddison and Councillor Pauls. I didn't see you guys were probably here earlier, but I just noticed you, so good morning. Moving on to delegation requests 6.1. Lisa DeCesare respecting traffic study on Middletown Road in person for a future meeting. You good? Chris Ritzma respecting item 9.1, Ward 1 Victoria Park Solar Compacting Waste Container Pilot, PW 24075, Ward 1 in person for today's meeting. Chris Ritzma cycling Hamilton respecting item 9.3, bicycle yield at stop signs, Idaho Stop, PW 24081 in person for today's meeting. And I need a mover and a seconder to approve the delegation requests. Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Maureen Wilson. Any discussion on the delegations? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. And the vote is up. And that carries 12-0. Thank you. Moving on to delegations, members are reminded that questions of the delegations are for clarification purposes only and not for debate. The delegates will have 5 minutes to speak. And 7.1 is Chris Ritzma respecting item 9.1, Ward 1, Victoria Park Solar Compacting Waste Containers. Chris, please come on up. Good morning, Chris. Right on time.
Thank you. I was listening live.
Yeah. Whenever you're ready, your 5 minutes will start. You know the drill with the ding at 4 minutes, but take it away.
Okay. Yeah, you see me on here twice. I did not prepare for the trash compactor one. I just was going to write a letter, but I figured I was already here for the other one. I was just reading through the report that was created by staff, and I just wanted to comment on the fact that there wasn't any information on the potential costs of servicing the bins. So I noticed that the bins, they commented on the report that they had to be visited less. I think it was 23 times for the solar compaction trash cans, 113 for the typical. And I just didn't see any breakdown of the cost or potential. I know they've kind of commented that they had to kind of visit both because not all the bins were the solar compaction ones, but I didn't see anything related to cost of servicing those bins and potential cost savings from that. So I just thought I'd comment on that. I would suggest that Public Works and Council ask for some information on that. I don't know if that wasn't taken into account for some reason, but I would ask Public Works members to ask staff about that and see if there's any information either today or if they could collect more information and come back to Public Works. Also, thank you for having me. Sorry, a lot of breath.
No problem, Chris. Okay, just before we can ask, Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you to Delegate Chris. I'm just making sure I'm crystal clear. You're looking for to receive further information on the operating costs of servicing and going there, gas collection, deposit, everything like that.
Yeah, through the chair, looking for information related to the cost of moving the trucks there, the gas, the maintenance, service staff. I don't know how many staff usually visit the parks, but to my understanding, it's approximately 2. I understand that there's, it's a unionized environment, so you don't want to be reducing staff, but I just think that maybe staff could be used more effectively to empty garbage cans. As someone who lives downtown and often visits Victoria Park specifically for the tennis courts on a regular basis, I do notice a lot of the trash bins are regularly full. And I think that if we could more effectively check this, the fullness of these bins and have a different way, perhaps it is still just going to be too expensive, and it might just be better to visit them on a more regular basis. But I'd be curious the servicing costs of the trash bins specifically.
Thank you.
Councillor?
Thank you, Chair.
Excuse me, thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, Chris, don't go anywhere. We're going to move on to 7.2. No, did we not just do that? Sorry, my agenda here has the same thing for 7.1, 7.2, but 7.2 is your delegation requesting the Idaho stop. 5 minutes, as you already know, and go ahead.
Okay. So again, just for clarity, the last one I was here just for myself. This time I'm speaking on behalf of Cycle Hamilton, a board on which I sit. Let's see. Cycle Hamilton is an organization that represents people of all ages and abilities who ride bicycles and other micromobility for various reasons, including commuting to work, traveling to family or friends, going to support our local businesses, and sometimes just for fun or exercise. In front of you today is a report from staff that's the result of a request put forward by the Cycling Advisory Committee as a citizen report. The recommendation by the Cycling Advisory Committee was that the city correspond with the province to request enactment of the necessary policy to allow cyclists to yield at stop signs rather than come to a complete stop where their wheels are not moving and they have to put their foot down. We at Cycle Hamilton believe the city should move forward with this request, both through Public Works recommending it to council and then passing it along to staff to correspond with the province. The first reason is that the complete stop on a bicycle is a little unreasonable. Those on bicycles rely on momentum to continue forward. Other vehicles require minimal effort to move forward, such as lightly pressing the accelerator or turning the handle on a motorized bike. In comparison, stopping on a bicycle requires far more effort, and slowing to yield to other vehicles and pedestrians makes more sense. The city even recognizes this with all bicycle boulevards suggesting some kind of removal of stop signs to encourage cyclists to use the road and do so legally. Small roundabouts in place of stop signs benefit all road users, but especially cyclists who are able to continue through without stopping. Unlike car and truck drivers with their view obstructed by pillars holding their roof, 2,000 to 5,000 pounds of weight, and low maneuverability, those on bicycles have a full 150-degree field of view unobstructed, weigh no more than 250 to 350 pounds depending on the bicycle, and have a high ability to maneuver around obstacles and pedestrians. Not to mention the stopping distance of someone on a bicycle is significantly less. The danger to others is as close as you can reasonably get to zero. For those worried this may endanger those on bicycles, yielding still means stopping for others if they arrive first. It's far more likely those on bicycles will follow this reasonable law of yielding over an unreasonable law. This is why the Idaho stop doesn't see an increase in danger. Allowing cyclists to yield at stop signs means all road users can more easily predict what others will be doing, and since drivers will be expecting cyclists to not stop unless they arrive first, they are more likely to wait and see what the cyclist will do. The Idaho stop means those riding bicycles will be more predictable. By requesting the province to change the law, it ensures the rule will be province-wide, increasing the predictability more across jurisdictions. For these reasons, Cycle Hamilton asked Public Works to support this recommendation from the Cycling Advisory Committee by decriminalizing something that poses no danger to law-abiding cyclists and others on the road, but increases comfort and makes riding more appealing. It can encourage people to get on a bicycle. It can reduce the cost of the city to pay for policing those who pose no danger to others. It also ensures that cyclists do not block drivers, who I've personally seen become incredibly displeased at my complete stop at a stop sign and slow speed recovery, then pass me aggressively. If you really think making a complete stop at every single stop sign is a reasonable law, please join us on a ride to our annual general meeting this Thursday, November 21st, and you can check our social media or newsletter. We'd love to welcome you, and you can make a complete stop at every stop sign with us.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions, comments? Oh, sorry. Councillor Pauls, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, the communication, if this goes through to all cars, where a car, there's a four-way stop sign, and I know you said whoever gets there first, they would have to follow the rule. I find it kind of hard to understand that even now, cars are upset at people that bike that do not stop. I'm just wondering what the outlash of what would happen if we do this law that a bike can just go and kind of ease through and keep going, and where a car cannot. I know you said cars are more dangerous, they're, all the reason, but the communication to tell everyone that that's going to be a law, that if we change it, how would we do that?
Through the chair, it's been my experience cycling and also as a driver that oftentimes people will just kind of wave you through because they understand a lot of people understand the momentum that a cyclist has and that stopping is a little bit unreasonable, especially if you're there first. I've also come to a complete stop and drivers have been a little bit confused about what I'm doing because they do expect a lot of cyclists to kind of move through because they understand that momentum. I think a lot of the anger comes down to the law. People see cyclists going through stop signs and yielding or not stopping when they've arrived first, and they see it as lawlessness from bicycles. But if you've ever ridden a bicycle, you know that coming to a complete stop, making your wheels completely stop and putting your foot down is just not something majority of cyclists are doing. Even the best cyclists don't typically do that at every single stop sign along their route, especially when it's quieter on the road. A lot of roads have stop signs for school children, for pedestrians, more so than the expectation to stop every single bicycle. And I think the issue here comes down to the fact that the bicycle is being treated identical to a vehicle in the Highway Traffic Act, which is mentioned in the report. And they're just not a vehicle. They're not a motorized vehicle. They're not thousands of pounds, and they're not as easy to continue moving forward. So I think that if the law was changed and education was put out there, then I think that people would be less angry because it would be cyclists following the law. And like I said, yielding still means stopping if the driver arrives first. So a cyclist who blows through a stop sign at 30, 40, 50 kilometers an hour and doesn't let the driver go first is still breaking the law. And that cyclist perhaps should be viewed as breaking the law and doing something dangerous.
So how do we intend to get the province to come on board with this? You're saying we're going to pass it at City Hall here, Hamilton. If we vote yes, it's a great idea. How do you intend to get the province to do that?
Yeah, through the chair. So when I actually sat on the Cycling Advisory Committee at the time that this was passed. What we were advised by staff is that Hamilton itself can't change the law, and staff probably wouldn't recommend that because of what's mentioned in the report, which is that doing it on a city-by-city basis creates dangers because you cross the border into Niagara and all of a sudden the law changes for cyclists. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. And so the city, I believe, is expected to essentially correspond with the province, which is what we ended up mentioning in the report at the Cycling Advisory Committee and what we suggest from Cycle Hamilton, to basically ask the province to amend the Highway Traffic Act, similar to what other states have done in the US and other jurisdictions, to kind of say a bicycle is not a vehicle under the Highway Traffic Act. It exists in some other type of space and therefore can be governed by other laws.
Councillor Pauls?
Thank you. The last thing is, you said that bicycles are not cars. We actually kept saying that a bicycle has every right, like a car, to be on the road. We've been promoting that. People need to be careful, but so I just feel a little bit uncomfortable because I get calls all the time, and I ride bike all the time. I get calls all the time that cars do not obey the law on stop sign. They want stop sign. They want a cop there to make sure.
What's the question?
So my question is,
Councillor?
why is it? Excuse me?
Question, please.
Was that there is a question, and I don't like to be interrupted either. I'm asking a question. Why do we have a law for cars and we're not going to have it for bicycles? If we say bicycle are allowed to be on the road.
Chris, and I'd appreciate if committee members would just wait for their turn to speak. Point of order is fine, but the other commentary, please.
What was
Go ahead,
the
Chris.
point of order? I'd like to know.
Councillor Pauls, you've asked a question. The delegate will answer the question. Chris, please go ahead.
Through the chair, The reason why I think bicycles should not be considered vehicles under the Highway Traffic Act is the same reason that we allow bicycles to operate on multi-use pathways with pedestrians. I don't think anybody thinks it's reasonable for cars to drive on the sidewalk or on a multi-use path, but I think that people would understand it's reasonable for cyclists, children, seniors, families, to use multi-use pathways, which are becoming more common in a lot of our suburban neighborhoods where pedestrian traffic is a little lower. And so I just don't think it's a reasonable expectation to consider them the same thing. And that's not to say that some of those same laws shouldn't apply to bicycles. I think that bicycles should have the right to use the road, just as pedestrians have the right of way to cross the road when they please. But I just think that under its current, law under the Highway Traffic Act, it's too limiting to what we can do with bicycle laws and ensuring the safe use of our roads for bicycles.
Councillor Pauls?
All right. Okay, thank you. And like I said, it's a province thing. We can't do it just in Hamilton. So the point is we all have to, communication, we have to make sure people know, and it's got to be all of Ontario if this is going to pass. So thank you.
Any other questions of the delegate? Seeing none, Chris, thank you for coming in today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, mover and second to receive the delegations. Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Wang. Electronic vote, please. The vote is up.
Councillor Pauls?
That carries 11-0. Moving on to consent items 9.1, Ward 1 Victoria Park Solar Compacting Waste Containers Pilot, PW2405, Ward 1, outstanding business list item. Director Graham, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you. Through the chair, Cynthia Graham, Director of Environmental Services. So following up on direction and funding support provided previously, staff installed solar compacting waste containers at Victoria Park on a pilot basis to see how well they performed and what any challenges or opportunities were presented. The report outlines the findings of this trial with results showing that the waste was compacted and therefore needed to be picked up less times than our regular trash containers. However, we did not see really any savings from an operations standpoint because staff were still at the park doing other activities and doing litter collection around the other amenities. I'm here for questions, and so is Manager of Parks and Cemeteries, Kara Bunn.
Thank you, Director. Mover and seconder receive the report. Councillor Wilson, M. Wilson, Councillor Wang. Councillor Wilson, yeah, go ahead. Do you want to go first?
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize, my eScribe is not responding. Thank you very much for this follow-up report. I had the same question as Delegate Ritzma, and if I understood the parameters of what was measured, the level of service in all parks, not just Victoria Parks, increases during summer months as a consequence of our complement being of students added to our complement, which enables us to provide more frequent visits. And I'm wondering, and the cost, obviously, of the solar containers is much more significant than those which are referenced in the report at $33. I was just wondering if you could follow up and answer the question of the operational calculation in order to make, I think, looking for an apples to apples comparison. Thank you.
Manager Bunn.
Through the chair, Kara Bunn, Manager of Parks and Cemeteries. Our operational cost is, for all of Victoria Park for the year, is $4,400 $127. And so I think we need to stress as well that when they're there doing the collection, they're also there looking at any other issues that might happen in the park. Is there illegal dumping beside the can? Is there graffiti that needs to be cleaned up? Are there any hazards? Things like that. And so we could reduce staff time going to the park and reduce our cost operationally, but you would lose with that other level of service.
Councillor Wilson?
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. And just for public consumption, when staff are on site, there are eyes and ears on the park along with residents. When they find issues such as graffiti, where does that information go? I'm just curious because we have had a discussion about enabling people on site and on the ground being able to report these things and the city providing perhaps a more efficient response through the chair.
Manager?
Through the chair, staff have a form that they can fill out. Once we move to a new asset management software, it'll all be electronic and work orders will be automatically created. But currently it is on paper sheets that come back to the yard, and then that is entered as a service request.
Okay, thank you. So in summary, the staff who are on site in terms of operational experiences aren't just collecting garbage. They're reporting and doing a number of other features that wouldn't be necessarily just included in a calculation about waste. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Wang, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wilson's questions kind of spurred a couple of other questions for myself. Based on this information report, it says the staff do not recommend the transition to solar compacting waste containers or change to park standards. However, we have very different sizes of parks, and Victoria Park is a very well-used and very frequented park with multiple waste receptacles. So the standard of care or the level of service at Victoria Park might be extremely different than a smaller parkette that might have specifically less frequency in service, frequency in terms of patronage. So I'm asking, what if this was transition? What would the likelihood be for a smaller used or less used park that may not have the same level of service as a Victoria Park? Is this still an option?
Manager?
Through the chair, it is an option. However, even these small parks need eyes on them fairly frequently. A lot of things can happen when you're not in there looking at the park. And I know that the public would be quite upset if we hadn't visited that park for, let's say, a month because there wasn't enough waste in it. But there was a lot of graffiti or something like that that we weren't seeing. By going into the park more frequently as staff, we then eliminate the need for the public to have to report these things to us.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Any other committee members? Councillor Beattie, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Just I was writing down some numbers, and I just wanted to understand. I thought I heard Manager Bunn say that the total garbage collection budget or allotment or expense for the park in a totality for all 17 waste receptacles in the $4,000 range. Did I have that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
And then these units were 8,491 each, just under 17,000 for the two. I've got that number correct.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beattie. Anyone else? No one on my speaker list, but I'll take a hand. No? Okay. Mover and seconder. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I apologize. Maybe I missed it, but are these big bellies, I think they're called, have we placed them in other parts of the city so that the assessment would be would be same. I thought there was some up on the West Mountain, but I'm not sure, through the chair.
Manager?
Through the chair, we did have 2 that were in Ward 2 in Bayfront Park, and we found, for the same reason, they weren't being utilized in the way that we thought was best, and so they were moved to the streetscape and were used by those crews instead, and they do work quite well within the street. I don't know if Angela's here to speak to that, but I know that there they don't have to be the same people with eyes on the street.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. So many, many years ago, there was, when I was thinking about the application of IT to city services and operations, there was a lot written and even a TV program on the work, I think, that the city of Boston, who is a leader on this front, was doing with GPS cans along their streets. And what it enabled was at headquarters, the municipality, in this case, I think it was the city of Boston, was able to tell Chair when the bins were full, rather than, as kind of this report explains, or rather than staff having to go out and not being able to discern the difference between the bins. They were able to schedule their operational work according to when they knew that the bins were actually full. And so that municipality determined that it was a much more efficient way to do their work, to assign their crews and all the capital that was involved. So I thought I've just heard Manager Bunn say that while these may not be good candidates for parks, given the frequent nature that we use parks, they may be better candidates for waste collectors on roadways. And I just want to make sure I heard that. And then my question, if I did hear that correctly, how is that information informing our ongoing decisions on servicing and equipment along roadways for waste? Through the chair.
Director Graham?
Through the chair. So in summary, agree that our findings are that not a great application in parkland for the reasons stated. However, that doesn't preclude opportunities that may be better uses for these. And I do know that I have had conversations with Director Angela Story about application on Streetscape, and we can report back or provide some additional information if there's better applications within the city for this type of technology.
Councillor?
So thank you. I do think that would be a worthwhile investigation if it's not too onerous on staff's time. It sounds like they're thinking about it anyway. And so I would request formally that the Public Works staff report back to this committee with their analysis and next steps on whether we should be moving to a more electronic form of roadside collection. Through the chair.
And Councillor, that would be a motion? Perfect. And seconder, Councillor Wang. Clerk, do you want the councillor to try to read that back to you one more time with a bunch of different words? Oh. Robots.
I didn't, are you?
Yes.
I didn't hear what happened, so are you able to?
All right.
Okay. Okay. I can do this at council if you would prefer. Yeah, next week, sure. If
That
that's
good?
easier, yeah.
Okay. So maybe we can even put a notice on later today for the next PW. Thank you, Councillor. All right, I'm going to try this one more time. I don't see any hands up. We have a mover and a seconder. We will go to the vote. And the vote is up. Thumbs up from Councillor Pauls.
Councillor Danko?
That carries 10-0. Thank you. Moving on to 9.2, Sewer Use Bylaw Program 2023 Annual Update, PW 24078, Citywide. Director Winters, please introduce your report.
Thank you, Chair Spatafor. Nick Winters, Director of the Hamilton Water Division. I'll actually pass it over to Manager Charlene Mackay with our Compliance and Regulations team to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, the Chair, my name is Charlene Mackay, Manager of Compliance and Regulations. With me today are Mike Spicer, Superintendent of the Environmental Monitoring and Enforcement Group, and Mohammed Mushtaba, Supervisor of EME. Through you, the Chair, we are pleased to bring forward the annual report on the sewer use bylaw activities for the year of 2023. This information report summarizes the 2023 actions and provides a high-level summary of the sewer discharge permits, cost recoveries, spill notifications, and legal actions. Of note, the Environmental Monitoring and Enforcement Unit has had an increase in the number of sewer discharge permits. This increase is resulting from two factors. First, the new 2022 construction dewatering permit program is growing, and there is increased awareness of this program. Secondly, this increase is also the result of staff efforts to review and audit dischargers across the city, finding new dischargers that require permits. The other notable increase over the previous years was the number of spill calls received by EME, 660 in 2023 versus 509 in 2022. This increase has been largely attributed to the increased awareness in the community on the spill reporting program and an increased focus on the environment within our city's residents and businesses. Further, with more hybrid work, we suspect there are more people working from non-traditional places and times, meaning there are more potential for people to note things such as spill events at any given time. In conclusion, the city has a robust sewer use bylaw program, and Hamilton Water will continually improve the program to protect the environment, the community, city staff, and the city's sewer system and wastewater treatment plants. Through you, the Chair, thank you for the opportunity to present the report, and we would be pleased to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Manager Mackay. Councillor Wang.
I truly appreciate this report. In Ward 4, as you know, we have very large industrial partners. But what we have received recently, and actually since the start of my term, is significant concerns about their chloride discharge. And I'd like to really understand, how do we, as a municipality, work with the MECP? Because the MECP also issues permits to these large industrial businesses. But then what if, I'd just like to understand, what is the relationship of MECP to us, and then where do we fit in if there is supposed excess that MECP has allowed, but frankly, they are going to be detrimental to the environment. So how does that work?
Manager.
Through you, the Chair, the Environmental Monitoring and Enforcement Unit has the ability to issue chlorides permits as part of their permitting system, and focuses on discharges to the sewer. Air and other environmental factors are within the focus of the Ministry of the Environment. But the focus is clearly discharges to the sewer.
Perhaps Manager Mackay could also just help me unpack this a little bit more, because as we have dewatering permits, as we have discharge permits, all to the sewer system, But again, I'm still struggling to understand where's the jurisdiction between MECP and our EME department? Because what we have seen is that there is discharge going into our sewer system, which is negatively impacting our wastewater treatment, but at the same time, it all gets discharged into the Red Hill Valley. So I'm really trying to understand where is the jurisdictional line where MECP is versus where our EME is.
Director Winters?
Yeah, happy to jump in through the chair. So to answer your question, Councillor, the Ministry of the Environment, their jurisdiction relies with discharges directly to the natural environment. They don't come into play with any discharges to the city's sewer system, even if those discharges are having an impact at our treatment facilities. They would monitor our regulatory compliance with the environmental compliance approvals for those facilities. And if we were running into a compliance issue there, they would expect us to take an action. That action might be to work with our environmental monitoring enforcement team through the sewer use bylaw program to restrict a discharge from industry. It might be to tweak something with our treatment systems in order to come back into compliance. But they don't get directly involved with discharges to the city sewer system. Really, what we're looking for is making sure that those discharges aren't going to cause an issue with treatment at our wastewater treatment facilities. They're not going to cause a health and safety issue. They're not going to cause degradation of our city sewer infrastructure at an accelerated rate. I hope that answers the question.
It does. It helps clarify a little bit. I'll still ask lots of these questions offline, but my next question is actually as it relates to the 10.2 million in recoveries. So when do we go in and actually generate recoveries? As I see that it is higher than what last year's was, or sorry, 2022's was, 10.2 million is a significant number. So when do we go in and actually do that?
Manager?
Through the chair, thank you, excellent question. Those recoveries are generated through the permitting system, where through overstrength permits, and surcharge permits, et cetera, the other types of sewer discharge permits. So the companies are directly charged where there is any surcharges or overstrengths, bringing a cost recovery to our wastewater collection system and our wastewater treatment system.
Last question then, as it relates to the idea of generating recoveries, when do we actually fine for overextension or just when there is trouble? When is that threshold and when do we fine and what is the opportunity there? Because again, it's trying to keep industrial partners accountable to the environment and to our city.
Through you, the chair. The approach for the Environmental Monitoring and Enforcement Group is progressive compliance with the sewer use bylaw. So initially, if there was a violation, a notice of a violation would be issued. And following that, they have the use of orders or compliance permits or requirements for pollution prevention plans. And only when and if required, they move forward with charges to the company.
Supplemental then.
Go ahead, Councillor.
What is the 2023 number for those violations? And have we been able to fine or receive those violations? I don't think I see that in this report.
Through you, the chair, there were 5 charges issued in 2023. As of the end of 2023, none of them made it through to prosecution. But as an update to council, 3 of those 5 have since in 2024 made through to prosecution of the 5.
What is the number for that?
The 3 out of the 5
Yes.
made it, through you, the chair, made it through prosecution in 2024.
So we
This
don't have
report
a
focuses on
number.
2023.
Okay. We don't have a number for those 3 out of 5? Like how much did we actually?
You're looking for a number like the cost of the fine?
Yes.
I think they're still in prosecution, but they're just conferring manager.
Through the chair, it's approximately about $49,000 in total with the 3 companies which were prosecuted in 2024.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be messaging you later, Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Any other speakers? Okay. Seeing none, we need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Wang, would you like to move that? Councillor Francis? We'll go to the vote. The vote is up. Councillor Paul's thumbs up. That carries 10-0. Thank you. Moving on to 9.3, bicycle yield at stop signs, Idaho Stop, PW 24081, citywide, outstanding business list item. Director Ayala, please introduce your report.
Good morning, Carolyn Ryle, Director of Transportation. Before committee today is an information report, bicycle yield at stop signs, Idaho Stop, based on direction approved in May 2023, respecting staff report back on findings related to cyclists yielding at stop signs versus coming to a stop, plus consult with Hamilton Police Services. In review of the United States, 11 jurisdictions have adopted similar laws with some modifications to the parameters of the bicycle yield at stop signs, stating that stop at yield laws are safer and more efficient than the current rules of the road. In addition, a stop as yield law, Idaho Stop, has the effect of forcing the rules of the road to catch up with cycling behaviors and safety. Although a number of cities and provinces in Canada have considered passing variations of the stop as yield law, Idaho stop laws have not been implemented in Canada or Ontario to date. While staff, Hamilton Police Services, the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Committee did not voice any concerns regarding the concept of Idaho stop laws, if the province of Ontario were to amend the Highway Traffic Act, a clear framework to educate, communicate, and follow would be required to ensure the Idaho stop type laws are applied in an effective and safe manner. Today, Manager Field is with me, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director. I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to receive the report, and then we can open up for discussion. Councillor Cassar, Councillor Alex Wilson. Any discussion? Councillor Wang, go ahead.
Thank you. For this report, it is asking for a correspondence item that would go to the province. Is that correct? And what would the content of this correspondence letter include? Because would it include just the straight information that we received from the citizens report and what staff have prepared, or how is this going to be wordsmithed to the province?
Well, Councillor, the director does have a draft of a motion if someone in committee wanted to move that. And if you'd like, I can get that hopefully put up on the screen for everyone's ability to read, and we can go from there. So I'll just give everyone a moment to read that, and then Councillor Wang, you still have the floor if you have any more questions for Director Ryle or Manager Field. Then you'll see in the direction, Councillor, it's that the City of Hamilton send a letter endorsing a law where cyclists can yield that stop sign known as the Idaho Stop, requesting the Province of Ontario to amend the Highway Act RSO 1990 as required.
Chair, I just wanted to ask, are there other municipalities that have done this as well?
Let's ask. Director or Manager?
Through the chair, Director Ryle. So there have been other municipalities that I'm aware of that have approached the province of Ontario to take a look at this. I have reached out to MTO myself looking for some information with regards to where the ministry may be with regards to some of that previous correspondence, and reading that City of Toronto, for example, was one that did. I also am aware of other provinces outside of Ontario that have also have contemplated bringing a law such as this forward. They have not done so thus far, but there are municipalities in different provinces that have looked at it.
Councillor?
My last question then is, should we push forward with the letter? What are we doing here? So we're still going to, at this point, it's really just a letter. We're not really doing any type of enforcement. We're just, at this point, asking the province to consider the Idaho stop as a change in the MTO. But at this point, we're not doing anything operationally on this. Is that correct?
I don't believe so, but I'll ask the director to confirm.
Through the chair, so that's correct. Until it is amended through the Highway Traffic Act, we wouldn't be obviously communicating or educating this. The rules of the road would still apply to all motor vehicles, cyclists on the roadway. What we would do if this was approved and forwarded to the province is that we would have conversations with our colleagues at the province to understand again where this is, where other municipalities may be, and then try and bring something more forward with other municipalities to have them consider this and look forward to changing or amending the law as required.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. Councillor Kassar.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to staff for the report and to our delegate, Chris Ritzma, for delegating. I think our delegate made a lot of excellent points that I would agree with. I think there is definitely merit in the Idaho stop. I think that there's two considerations that we need to consider because it is the Highway Traffic Act. Provincial legislation is one to the level of support across the province from other municipalities, which Councillor Wang was asking the director about. And two, also there's how receptive the province is to this topic. And my read on it at the moment would be, now is not the time to, take a swing at that. So I think that's just something for consideration. I didn't know there would be a potential motion here. I think my take on it would be that's not something that at this point in time today that we should necessarily move. I think we need to do some assessment on, the level of success and the potential for success. But, personally very supportive of what it's about. I think it's just a matter of looking at when it may have the best chance of success. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pauls.
Thank you. And yes, I'd like to ask staff, you mentioned something about some have modification. I wonder if you could name some of that, the modification of this act.
Director.
Through the chair, so in the report, Councillor, on page 2, throughout the 11 jurisdictions in the United States, it talks to the different variations. For example, like they have an age criteria in one of the areas, Colorado, for example. They have a change in number, for example, roadways with 2 or fewer lanes in Delaware and North Dakota. So they have different parameters, for example, on where they're allowing, for example, the cyclist to yield versus coming to a complete stop. So they just have some variation on how the law and where it would be applied throughout their road network. It's being adopted.
Councillor.
Thank you. And this is it's complex. I mean, I'm glad we're not deciding today, and it's the province under the province Provincial Traffic Act. I'll leave it at that. I think it's not something that we're passing here, and maybe something to look after. I understand. I know people are doing it anyways. Sometimes I bike and I don't fully stop when it's a country road. I'll leave it at that this is complex and we'll have to wait for future understanding of it and what the Provincial Traffic Act says. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. I don't have anyone else on the speakers list. If there is anyone that wants to take that direction, we can. Again, it just would be an endorsement of it. We do not have any authority over the Highway Traffic Act. So I'm not seeing anyone else on the speakers list, so we will move forward to receive the report. I believe we have a mover and a seconder, so we'll go to the vote now. The vote is up. Sorry. No, we're going
It
to pause
says that
that.
the report is to be approved. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pauls?
We're just receiving this, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I approve.
That carries 10-0. Thank you. 9.4, Procurement Policy 10, Kenilworth Transmission Main Vertical Section Repairs, PW 24082, Ward 4 and 6. Director Kennedy, please introduce your report.
Thank you, Director Jackie Kennedy of Engineering Services. The Kenilworth water main is 1,050 millimeter or just over 1 meter diameter trunk water main that is one of two sources of water to the mountain. It can only be isolated during the winter months when the demand for water is lower. In 2023, a contract was awarded to Clearway Construction to complete repairs on the pipe, and the work was commenced at the first opportunity last winter. While the work was underway, additional deterioration on vertical sections of the water main were found. Due to the criticality of the water main and the complexity of its isolation, an emergency procurement was sought and authorized to extend the existing contract to include the additional scope. The work was completed last spring, and this report is brought forward now to fulfill the reporting requirements of the procurement bylaw. I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. We'll find a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Councillor Wang, I'd ask Councillor Jackson, but he's not here. Ward 6, Councillor Francis, you good? Perfect. Any discussion? Councillor Wang.
So we won an award or recognition for this, that emergency work. Did I get that right?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, we won an award for the emergency repair work as well as the base scope of work.
All right, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you,
for the
Councillor.
question.
Thank you again, Director, you and your team on that award. I don't see anybody else on the speakers list. We'll go to the vote to receive the report. Vote is up. And that carries 10-0. Thank you. Moving on to discussion items, 11.1, Carlisle Water Storage Municipal Class Environmental Assessment and Conceptual Design, PW 24076, Ward 15. Carrie Vanderberg, Director Water and Wastewater Operations, will introduce the report.
Good morning, Carrie Vanderperk, Director of Watershed Management. I am pleased to introduce the recommendation report on the Carlisle Water Storage Environmental Assessment and Conceptual Design. The city engaged a consultant to conduct an environmental assessment for the drinking water storage facility in the Carlisle Rural Settlement Area. The existing water system has been unable to meet the standards set by the Ministry of Environment, particularly in the summer when water demands tend to increase. A previous conservation program conducted in the community highlighted that additional storage capacity is essential to support both current and future community needs. The assessment identified that the existing system, serviced by an elevated tank, requires an additional 689 cubic meters to meet immediate demands and a further 1,271 cubic meters to accommodate projected growth by 2051. This led to the conclusion that a new water storage infrastructure is necessary to ensure reliable service for the community. After evaluating multiple potential sites and types of storage solutions, the preferred option is to construct a larger elevated tank at the existing location in Tower Park on Wood End Drive. Public consultations were conducted to gather input, and due to recent changes in the EA process, this assessment was later classified as exempt under the guidelines. The project is now set to move forward without further mandatory review, which streamlines the path to detailed design and construction at a cost of approximately $11 million, which has been included in the recommended 2025 water, wastewater, and stormwater rate capital budget that will be presented to GIC this coming Friday. So with that, the project team is here with me today and can answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vanderberg. Mover and seconder, Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Cassar, and Councillor Maureen Wilson. You're up.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I am just curious with respect to the referenced conservation program between 2015 and 19. Would the director be able to unpack that a little bit in terms of what kind of program? And maybe I missed it, but are we able to tell how much water this area consumes compared to other areas? Is it more than those who are on meters or not? Just some sort of comparative analysis would be helpful. Thank you.
Who would like to unpack? Director Winters.
So through the chair, to address the councillor's question, I happen to be Director of Operations for Hamilton Water in those years when this conservation program was being run. So I probably had front row seats to what was going on. So there was a, councillor, there was a community committee that was struck, a water conservation committee for the community of Carlisle that included community representatives as well as representatives from the Halton Region Conservation Authority. And really the work that was done, it looked at an assessment in that community of whether the water use was associated with properties actually wasting water. We did a lot of public information about the city's existing watering restrictions through our bylaws. We worked with irrigation companies to get certified irrigation specialists working in that area, as well as providing a grant program to have the properties in Carlisle that wish to take advantage of that grant bring these certified specialists onto their property to assess the performance of their irrigation systems. We implemented some specialty notifications in that community for when water tower levels were low. It was a very simple, red, yellow, green type of system with information on a web page as well as signage in the community, with the goal being to trigger the community to reduce their residential water use during periods where we were having trouble maintaining levels in that tower. The model itself was really very effective to have collaborative conversations with the community and to impact behavior. But the challenge that we ran into is that we didn't identify really that the residents in Carlisle were wasting water. What we found is that the demographics of that community, particularly from a property size perspective, is somewhat unique. They do have large properties, and with that comes large irrigation systems. And generally, and I won't say this exclusively because there's always one or two outliers in any study area, we found that yes, some residents were using large volumes of water during summer months, but they weren't overwatering based on industry standards. Their watering irrigation systems were being maintained to a good standard. And really the conclusions of that community committee were that, well, we were able to influence behavior in a positive way. We weren't able to reduce the community water use enough to avoid an infrastructure need. Hope that answers the question.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. So just to be clear for folks, I wasn't suggesting that they were wasting water. I was trying to understand what was being done to try and influence or perhaps diminish the use of water. And I appreciate the explanation. I have a subsequent question then. Was there any measures taken, given the size of properties, to try and discuss different availability of, say, plant species, say, other than, say, grass, for example, naturalization, that just doesn't warrant the kind of watering that often people might use on just grass, through the chair.
So through the chair, first, councillors, my apologies. I didn't mean to put words in your mouth and insinuate that you asked a question that you didn't. But with regards to your second question, yes, certainly part of the program was also looking at educating or providing the availability of education to residents about water-wise, landscaping as well. And so that was information that was available to those community members. And we certainly have some uptake on that part of the community working group as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Looking around the table, welcome Councillor McMeekin. Councillor, did you want to speak to this at all?
Yes, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
My apologies. We've had a family crisis which I had to deal with, and second one in a week. It's been a rough few days. Just on Carlisle, we used to live, my wife and I, in the area, and the water usage was a problem. All these big houses watering their grass and such. So plans were put in place to try to restrict that. And that's been an on again, off again kind of item. There's been a lot of building up that way, and this new enhanced and expanded water towers is pretty critical to serving the good people of Carlisle. Notwithstanding the concern about water use, and it's a generic issue that a lot of people tend to take water for granted, and we should never do that. It's ideally, in fact, not even ideally, it's probably the most critical resource we have in this city. We invest a lot of money keeping it clean and flowing to people, and water towers in more isolated rural areas seem to be the way to go. And this has been a good project. The engagement of the community has been really helpful. And I think with that comes a certain acknowledgement of responsibilities around water use. That's all I would say to that. The agenda, my apologies for being late.
No apologies needed, Councillor. Thank you. I don't see anyone else on the speakers list, so I believe we have a mover and a seconder. We can move to the vote. Thumbs up from me, please. That carries 11-0. Thank you. Moving on to 11.2, Greensville Drinking Water System Environmental Assessment Study, PW 24077 in Ward 13. Director Vanderbeek, you're up again.
Thanks, Carrie Vanderperk, Director of Watershed Management, through the chair. Our second environmental assessment report this morning is for the Greensville drinking water system, which was conducted to explore improvements to its water supply. Currently, the system relies on a single municipal well and pumping station, which lacks a backup supply, and also has components that are nearing the end of their lifespan. This EA evaluated several solutions to ensure safe and reliable drinking water for residents that include redundancy. The preferred option is to construct a new pumping station and reservoir in Johnson 2 Park while decommissioning the existing station. This solution is considered the most effective in terms of environmental impact, resource capacity, and resilience to climate change. Construction is expected to begin in 2026 with a timeline of about 10 months. The project is estimated to cost $6.97 million, which has been included in the upcoming 2025 capital budget. The environmental study report is now ready for public review, and upon approval of these recommendations, the project will move forward into the design and implementation phases after the 30-day review period. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Mover and seconder, Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Wang. Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, supportive of the recommendations, an important investment in renewing essential infrastructure. Just one quick question for the team. I felt the PIC summaries, specifically the Q&As on the Engage Hamilton website, really helpful in understanding how the community was responding or reacting to some of this information. Normally when we get kind of reports like this, sometimes as an appendix, there's a consultation summary. Don't normally see that with EAs, so just a process question. is there a reason kind of different things are treated differently? And then also in the future, would it be possible just to, when we have those summaries of public comments already on Engage Hamilton, to have those as an Appendix B, just a quick engagement summary? So it's right here in the report. Other than that, no questions. I think the reason I just bring it up is I think there's concerns in the community regarding a provincial impact, which is the management of well water availability overall, the impacts of ongoing industry in the area and what that's doing to well capacity overall. And I think you can see that concern, which is out of scope of this project, but is definitely in the community when you read through those comments. And so just wondering if they can be in the report or in future reports like this.
Director?
Through the chair, yes, the Engage Hamilton website was definitely a new tool at the time of this this EA. So when we have shiny new tools, we tend to like to use them. And this project was definitely a great way to get the information out to the community. And yes, we will take it under advisement for next time for an Appendix B for our reports and EAs to include that information.
Thanks so much. And again, supportive of the actual report itself, the investment in this essential renewal, and all of the work that was done to consult with community and answer questions over the past year. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wilson. I don't see anyone else on the speakers list. So we'll go to the vote to approve the report. And the vote is up. Councillor Pauls is a thumbs up. And that carries 11-0. Thank you. Moving on to 11.3, extension of the Atkins Realist Canada Inc. consultation work. Grindstone Creek Bridge 451 for construction design liaison contract administration and consultant extra work. PW 24080 Ward 15. Director Kennedy, please introduce the report.
Thank you. The Grindstone Creek Bridge, located on Dundas Street East, referred to as Bridge 451, is in need of replacement and scheduled for construction in 2025 and 2026. The construction of this bridge is estimated at a cost of $14 million and will be staged over 2 years to facilitate partial traffic flow on this corridor. Through the design, several unanticipated issues arose, and approval to increase the value of the purchase order is being sought to complete the design in the amount of up to $40,000. Approval is also being sought to retain the design consultant for support throughout the construction, which was not contemplated at the initial award of the design. Their expertise will complement the city's construction management team and reduce technical and schedule risk. $160,000 is being sought to extend their scope for this additional support. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Mover and seconder to approve the report. Councillor McMeekin, Councillor Alex Wilson. Any questions or discussion? Councillor McMeekin, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a quick generic comment. This is probably, of all the infrastructure projects in the ward, probably the one that has been not moved on as quickly as it should have, and is pivotal. The biggest single traffic problem and safety problems we have in the ward, in Waterdown in particular, 54% of all of my emails are about traffic and safety. And you can imagine that with all the construction, all the building that's going on there, both north and particularly in southeast portion of Waterdown, it's really important to be done. And it's kind of funny, you know, I'll get 7 letters a week from people saying, when the hell are you going to fix that road, you know, from Mill Street to the Burlington border, and that bridge, which is awful in the winter and needs repair and it's often closed down. And then when we do it, people writing to me and say, how the heck are we going to handle the traffic now that we don't have the bypass that's been kind of on the schedule for the last 20 years but hasn't been finished, and all the traffic that's going to be diverted to Parkside. So we flagged that. I only want to say it here because it may come up again. We flagged that as probably the major pressing issue the next year or so, when that bridge on Dundas Street is closed, one-way traffic east, but you can't come back west over it. So everything will be diverted through the Mountain View survey off of King Road onto Mountain and on over to Waterdown Road where we installed the light, thank goodness. They'll turn right and go back into Waterdown to get home to avoid the bridge, or onto Parkside, which is already atrocious in terms of the traffic. The key here, and I just flag it for information because I'm not optimistic it's going to happen in the next year or so, is that darn bypass. We just got to get it done. That would alleviate most of our problems in Waterdown. It would be a real boon to retail people too, because right now coming into Waterdown, you can't stop. You don't dare stop. You'd be if there's, and God help you if there's a problem on the highway. It all comes up through Waterdown. So very necessary project. Glad it's finally happening, and we just have to manage the on again, off again, fix it, don't fix it dynamic. Thanks.
Thank you, Council. I almost called you Director McMeekin. Councillor McMeekin. Not seeing anyone else on the speakers list. We have a mover and a seconder, so we will go to the vote. Thumbs up from Councillor McMeekin. Councillor Pauls. Thumbs up. Thank you. And that carries 12-0. Moving on to 11.4, Kenilworth Drainage Channel Remediation, PW 24073 in Ward 4. Director Winters, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair Spatafora. So Public Works Committee, the report that's before you this morning is seeking both financial and procurement authority for Public Works to proceed with work within the Kenilworth Drainage Channel, which is an area north of Burlington Street, sandwiched in between ArcelorMittal Dofasco and National Steel Car properties. And that channel carries stormwater and during wet weather events combined sewage from the city's sewer system into Hamilton Harbor. As council is aware, as a result of a Ontario Superior Court justice order from July 24th of this year, the City of Hamilton, as well as ArcelorMittal Dofasco, are required by that order to do various things. And for the City of Hamilton, that includes dredging the portion of this channel that we own. ArcelorMittal Dofasco also has to remediate infrastructure that they own that stands between our sewer outfall in the harbor, with the goal being a free flow of stormwater through that channel without impacting the National Steel Car property. Very complicated situation. The court proceedings themselves, the case went back 12 years, and quite frankly, it was during that court proceeding that the city actually found that we owned portions of this channel. Prior to that, we weren't aware of that, and as a result, there had been no maintenance by the city on this infrastructure over the years. Over the past few months, ArcelorMittal Dofasco staff and city staff have been putting our heads together, because we are in this together, to figure out what is the best possible path forward to getting this work done. It is a very confined working area, this channel, in a heavy industrial area with a lot of complicating factors, including significant safety issues as a result of the types and frequency of heavy equipment that move through the area. And really, the best project, and when I say best project, I'm speaking specifically to value for City of Hamilton ratepayers who are going to fund our portion of the work, is to have one contractor working in this area, completing both the work for the City of Hamilton and ArcelorMittal Dofasco at the same time. That's the lowest risk and will provide the best value for the project. So we've been trying to figure out how do we make that happen? Working within both of our organizational structures. And so we do have project teams that are working jointly together between ArcelorMittal Dofasco and the city, who've come up with the background studies, filed for permits through the Hamilton Conservation Authority, as well as proceeded to design work and construction estimates. We have struck a steering committee for this project between ArcelorMittal-Dofasco and the city, and General Manager Can and I both sit on that steering committee along with executives from Dofasco as well to provide guidance and remove barriers. And we've been working with city procurement as well as ArcelorMittal-Dofasco procurement and legal services for both sides as well to determine the path forward. And that path forward is what's in front of you today. We are recommending that the General Manager of Public Works, General Manager Can, be authorized to enter into a cooperative procurement with ArcelorMittal-Dofasco following their open procurement process to tender this work and award it to one contractor. We're recommending that the general manager be authorized to enter into any agreements necessary to facilitate that work. And then we have recommended the necessary budget to complete that work as part of this report as well. I will say, just before I turn it over to questions, we do have Director Iacco here with us this morning in case there's any questions related to procurement. And we also have Deputy City Solicitor Kosh Parameshwaran. He is online on the WebEx if there's any questions that would guide us into a legal path. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. We'll get a mover and seconder. So mover will be Councillor Wang. Seconder, hopefully Councillor McMeekin. Perfect. And we'll go to Councillor Wang for our first speaker.
Thank you. I am heartened to hear that Dofasco has been a really big part of this process. One of my first biggest questions when reading this report, not knowing the details, was how committed they were to working with us on this, because I was concerned that we were going to foot half of the bill here, and what if they reneged? So it sounds as though they have been a willing and very cooperative co-collaborator on this, just to get clarity on that.
GM Can.
Through the chair, General Manager Carlisle Can. As Director Winters alluded to, both Nick and I sit on the steering committee. They have been 100% committed since the day we've been charged. We have been at the table and we've been negotiating what I would call technical scope so that we pay our fair share and a reasonable share of the cost of this job to get it done. In addition, we are working with legal and procurement to make sure that the city's interests remain paramount.
Excellent.
But they have been excellent partners so far.
Excellent. Okay. My second question then is, in addition to the dredging work that this one contractor will be doing, is there going to be work on, say, the actual physical parts of this channel? So encroaching into like the non-waterway areas, and will this contractor be able to do that kind of work as well?
Who would like to take that one? Director Vanderbeek.
Carrie Vanderperk, Director of Watershed Management. So to answer your question, Councillor, there is a number of pieces to this project. The city scope involves dredging the channel itself and ensuring that the sediment is removed from the channel. Dofasco scope includes clearing out the culverts that are associated with the channel. So there are currently three, technically four culverts that run through this channel. And the one at the end of the channel is the one that is would move the material into Hamilton Harbor, into the slip that is at that location. So Dofasco is looking into ways to unblock those channels and potentially some engineering and design to reconstruct how they look and how they operate as well.
Oh, so just so that I'm clear, we're doing all of the water dredging parts. Dofasco's, they're doing all of that physical infrastructure type work, including the culvert that you were speaking about. Is that right, Director?
Through the chair, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. GM Can, I know you wanted to add something.
Yeah, just to add on to Director Van Perk's response, the non-water works that are going to be happening in the laydown areas, site prep, what have you, and the dewatering activities will all be on private properties within the AMD lands. Thank you.
Thank you, GM.
Those are all my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? I'm going to pass the chair to Vice Chair Alex Wilson. I just have one question to GM Can or Director Winters. Through you, Chair, by the sounds of procurement's going directly through Dofasco, they will award the bid, and all we are going to do is pay them our 50%. So we're writing a check at the end of the job for 50%. Just trying to understand how that transaction will happen. Through you, Chair.
Yep, through the chair, General Manager Carl O'Connell. I'll start the response and invite Director Winters or Director Tina to jump in if she so pleases. At the end of the day, once we have a successful bid, we hope to award 2 contracts, one for the AMD scope of work and one for the city scope of work. They would be billing us directly, and then we would pay that invoice based on certificates from in the field that confirms that the work has been done. Thank you.
Through the chair, Tina Iacco, Director of Procurement. At this time, we're still drafting and assisting with AMD with the tender documents. However, it is our vision to have the document, as GM Khan had mentioned, the document have separate contracts, one for AMD and one for the city to execute on our own. I envision that the schedule of prices will come in separately for both so that we will have a clear identification as to what our costs are for the work as opposed to just splitting it down the middle.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wilson. I'll take the chair back, and I don't see anyone else on the speakers list, so we will go to the vote. The vote is up. And that carries 12-0. Thank you. We're going to move on to motions, and I will pass the chair over to Vice Chair Wilson.
Thank you. First up in motions is motion 12.1. Councillor Spatafora, are you please able to introduce your motion, and do you have a seconder?
Yes, I do, Vice Chair. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Francis. It was to be Councillor Jackson, but obviously he mentioned he had to leave this morning, so it'll be Councillor Francis. Okay, so my motion here is to report back on a feasibility planning study for the Lincoln M. Alexander Parkway in Ward, coming from the Ward 14 office. You'll see in the whereases, there's some information as it relates to when these roadways were built and the traffic counts. I won't go through all of them because I'm hoping staff can provide some information as well for everyone. But the therefore be it resolved is that both transportation planning and transportation divisions be authorized and directed to report back on the technical work that's been completed to date on the feasibility study, including the preliminary identification of alternatives for both the Red Hill Parkway and the Lincoln Alexander Parkway in Q1 of 2025, and that staff continue to work with the Joint Stewardship Board with regard to the Red Hill Valley Parkway alternatives assessment and potential next steps. Hoping to speak to it briefly, Chair. Thank you. So I have one question for staff that I'm hoping they can answer, but I think there's been a lot of work that's gone into these projects already. Good work from staff that was paused a few years ago, and I think there's more work that needs to be done. I think it should be done. I can speak for at least residents in Ward 14 that are trying to get to, say, across the city using the link or the Red Hill. And before it might have been your rush hour typical traffic, 4:30 to 6. The link has become, and the Red Hill, a roadway that continues to be, I would say, used by many trucks. I think it's a connector for a lot of logistic companies. And what it's done is made it hard for our residents to get across the city, and whether that's taking their children to art classes, whether that's going to visiting residents, whether that's going to sporting events for their children. So I think the work that was started is important, but I think that the rest of the work needs to be completed, especially as you see in one of the whereases when we talk about if these are roadways that we'd want to upload to the province, I think having all the work done and the costing done, I think is all important information that if we want the province to look at these roadways, I think it's important to have all the information if we're having those conversations. So my one question to Director Hollingsworth or Director Ayala, can you just summarize what we've done up until now, the amount of work that's been put in to this already, and what that future work kind of looks like, just in a short summary? I know you're going to bring a detailed report back, but just kind of the history, how we got here, through you, Chair.
Yes, through the chair. Brian Hollingworth, Director of Transportation, Planning and Parking. It's our group in coordination with Transportation that's leading this study. It was initiated back in 2021, and the primary purpose of it was to look at the medium and long-term needs of the Lincoln RHVP. So the technical work includes an examination of previous background studies, a high-level identification of existing environmental and socioeconomic considerations. A large part of the study is to look at the traffic projections, both existing operations and future needs based on the growth plan for the city. The technical work also looks at the identification of different alternatives which aim to address goods movement, transit opportunities. It does look at a widening option. And so to date, it was all done through a consulting assignment, which the budget was approved by council. It was a significant consulting assignment. And to date, a lot of the technical work, such as the traffic projections, have been completed. Public consultation has not been completed, largely in part due to the direction to make sure that the work, in particular the engagement, is in line with the Joint Stewardship Board agreement. So we are excited about the opportunity to share some of the technical work, and very much supportive of the motion. Thank you.
That's it for me, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Spatafora, for introducing your motion. We do have a bit of a speakers list. Councillor Wang, followed by Councillor Kretsch, followed by Councillor Kassar. So we'll start with you, Councillor Wang.
Thank you. Director Hollingworth, I thought you just said that all of the consultation was already done, but then there's the public consultation that still needs to get done. Is that what you just said? Sorry, I just kind of missed that. Could you just repeat that again?
Through the chair, no, the public consultation has largely not started. There's been a notice of commencement released and a website posted, a little bit of stakeholder consultation, but the broader consultation that you would envision as part of an environmental assessment has not occurred.
Okay, so it has not occurred despite the fact that we had tried to start this a while ago and then that got shut down, and so now this is the second restart based on this motion starting the second restart. Is that correct?
Based on council direction, staff were directed to complete the technical work, and that's what's been done.
Okay. And I appreciate that the Joint Stewardship Board has been named within this motion. What is the actual process to inform the Joint Stewardship Board on this?
Through the chair to the Councillor Carlisle Can, General Manager of Public Works. Staff continue to work with the city's board members and the Joint Stewardship Board in developing that process. To date, we have developed what we call as the city's templates information report and a report for recommendation. So any works within the defined by the agreements would either trigger one of two information report or a recommendation report. I would note that this does not include maintenance work or work within the road right-of-way. So if it was part of the original project, we typically would not advise. As we move forward and we continue to build relationships, we will continue to assess our practices and policies and work with the board members to keep them informed and make sure that we bring forward things in a timely manner. Thank you.
My last question through you, Chair, is on the A of therefore be it resolved. It's asking for a report back by Q1 2025. Is that actually doable, or is that too soon to do this type of work?
Through the chair, as mentioned, the study started in 2021. It was done through a consulting assignment. A large amount of work has been put in, so we believe that we can summarize the technical work and bring that forward in Q1 2025.
Thank you. Those are all my questions, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Wang. Next up, Councillor Crutch, followed by Councillor Kassar.
Thanks. My question's a little bit more procedural. This seems like an affirmation motion of a feasibility study we've already said we were going to do in the last term of council. So for me, I'm a little bit confused about that. So I guess I want to understand why we need a motion to do this work that we said we were going to do in the previous term of council. Is the activity here that we're affirming we want to take on road widening projects? And then I have a question about public transit. So I'm just wondering if somebody could talk me through what the activity is here.
So through the chair, Carlisle Can, I'll try and start the answer and then invite either one of the directors to join in. I think at the end of the day, staff were directed to pause the work as we continue to build our relationship with the Joint Stewardship Board. There were concerns with regards to how we consult with, who we consult with, and what are the requirements with regards to informing and consulting. Did that lend itself to consent and approval? So we were told or directed by council at the time to pause the work. We are trying to move forward with it. We recognize the volumes of traffic that are traveling the link and also the Red Hill Valley, and we think it's in the city's best interest to restart this work. Thank you.
Thanks. And my understanding is the work you're talking about specifically is the feasibility study to determine how much it would cost, very simply, and how long it would take to do road widening of these two roadways. And that was from a 2020 motion passed by council.
Through the chair, that is correct. The feasibility would then lead itself into further works required as the reports recommend. Thank you.
Oh, that's really important. I'll follow up on that. So what you're saying is that it would automatically happen, or would, after the feasibility study comes back, then council would make a decision about what to do?
Through the chair, the feasibility study is really step 0.1, looking at alternatives, the need. There would be much more work through the environmental assessment, phases 1, 2, and 3, in terms of design, evaluation of alternatives, public consultation, and all of the work that would be required before any decision is made on widening.
Thank you. What are the costs associated with the feasibility study? Do you know those offhand?
The budget for the feasibility study was approximately $500,000.
Okay, my last question was, is this work been looked at in terms of this current city council's term of council priorities, specifically with respect to trying to make the city more accessible by transits for all road users? Like, have we done that kind of analysis, or is this really just unpausing some work from last council?
Through the chair, I think that the feasibility work does adopt a multimodal a lens, as I mentioned, looking at the needs of transit, active transportation, a do-nothing option. I'd say all alternatives are on the table at this point, in alignment with council direction.
Thanks very much. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you, Councillor Crutch. Councillor Kassar is next on our speakers list.
My question has been asked and answered. Thank you.
At this moment in time, there isn't anyone else on the speakers list. I see Councillor Maureen Wilson is signaling. So, Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make sure I understand, in kind of categorizing the work done to date, that will daylight the assumptions at that point, or do those assumptions, are they set out in subsequent work? Through the chair.
Through the chair, could you clarify what you mean as assumptions, like assumptions in evaluation criteria, the identification of alternatives?
My understanding that, and I stand to be corrected, that's the nature of my question, is trying to understand on the work that has been done to date, will the report that you provide back, assuming that this motion will carry, will it be setting out the assumptions that have guided all the work to date, such as population growth, such as modes of travel, such as availability of different options of travel, such as housing location, those sorts of things? Or
Through the
does
chair,
that come
thanks for the
later?
clarification. The answer is yes. We've looked at the various population forecast scenarios. We've looked at travel pattern, where people are coming from and going to, looked at employment implications and things like that. So all that is part of the technical work in the study.
Thank you. It's good to hear that affirmation. I guess my question, though, is will those assumptions be set out clearly when you're reporting back with this motion through the chair?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On our second time speakers list, Councillor Crutch.
That's why I said for now, because I knew I would ruminate some more questions. I was trying to figure out how to phrase this, and I think I've got it now. I think I'm a little bit confused about the language you've been using when we talk about this today. You've been talking about pausing and unpausing, but the motion doesn't talk about unpausing anything. The best I can understand here is that this motion just got answered by us raising it on the floor. Like, you already just told us kind of where we're at in the process, and that it's paused because we're trying to consult with the JSB. So my understanding is that we'll continue to try and consult through the JSB, and once that process is completed, then I suppose the work would unpause. Like, what does this motion do? I simply don't understand. Like, I really want to understand from staff's perspective what this is achieving based on the fact that we're waiting to get a result from meeting with folks as part of the joint stewardship process. That's not going to change. And until that's done, there's nothing to unpause. And then again, the motion doesn't direct us to unpause anything. So what is the motion doing from your perspective? Because I don't see it accomplishing anything at this point that we're already not doing.
So through the chair to the councillor, I believe this motion is really to look at a body of work that needs to be done with regards to addressing the transportation network within the city of Hamilton. This is one component of it. It has been on the books. Staff will continue to work with all parties as we move forward. If we're unsuccessful in doing any elements of this work, we would report back to council and committees to say, here are the challenges we face, and we would seek, I guess, based on the nature of the concerns or the challenges, we would seek further direction based on our recommendations. But part of what we have to do when we look at the transportation network is move forward on all bodies of work. And my understanding is back in 2021, this was put on hold by the previous council, and we were directed not to proceed with it, but continue with the technical elements of the work.
Thanks, and I'll try and ask my question maybe a different way. How does that motion change that direction? This motion change that direction? Because it doesn't say anything about unpausing it. I don't think we'd want to unpause it because we're in the middle of trying to talk to the folks at the JSB. So the JSB seems to be the part here which is causing the pause. We're going to continue to have those conversations to unpause it. You're speaking about, starting up the work again. This motion doesn't say that. So what is this motion actually doing? Except for just saying there was a motion in 2020 and there's still a motion from 2020. I just don't get it. I'm sorry.
Yep, through the chair to the council, I believe the intent of the motion, and I believe the author of the motion has a comment to add. Part A really speaks to the fact that we're bringing forward the feasibility study and the results of it. And that's our intent in moving forward, is so that committee and council is not surprised by it. It was discussed at Public Works Committee through the motion. If this is the committee's desire and they want us to move forward with it, by all means we will. But really it serves a little bit as notice that this body of work will be coming forward in Q1 2025. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to clarify that. Sorry, just 2 words in here, because I know that the mover wanted to address this, but I don't think this is something the mover can answer, because I think this is really about, at the end of the day, what staff take from this and what they're going to do. I'm going to read this out. That both transportation planning and transportation divisions be authorized and directed to report back on the technical work completed to date. Not new work, nothing going forward, to date, on the feasibility study, including preliminary identification of alternatives. So including meaning to date. So there'd be no new work being done based on this. motion in front of us. So when you keep saying that we're going to restart the feasibility study, that's not what the motion says. So I'm trying to understand where that's coming from. That's a different motion people want to put on the table. Great.
Through the chair, as you can imagine, things are complex with respect to this study, for sure, because you've got the Joint Stewardship Board Agreement, which has certain language in it as to what staff can and can't do, or what needs to be done. I think this motion gives staff at least some clear direction from my perspective on getting the technical work out there, and continuing to work with the JSB. But from our perspective, we understand what it means. It means show us the results of the study, and we've got direction to do that. Whereas the previous motions, I don't think were as clear in that regard.
Thanks very much. So if I get it now, and I'm glad I do, we're going to be looking at the work that's been done to date historically. We're going to bring that information forward so we can all see what work has been done to date, and then hopefully also continue with the JSB process. I'm just was flagging all this because the way it was being talked about is as if we were going to do more things. The answer looks like we're just going to report back. I'm fine to support that. I mean, why shouldn't we know what work we've already done? Thanks.
Okay, we have Councillor John Paul Danko as a first-time speaker, followed by Councillor Maureen Wilson as a second-time speaker.
Thank you. And just speaking from my perspective as a mountain councillor and not presuming to speak on behalf of this entire committee, mountain residents do absolutely want this work to be unpaused, to continue work evaluating what the future of the link is going to be, whether that is additional lanes or additional transit or options or whatever it is. I mean, this is important work as we're continuing to grow out our city and adding hundreds of thousands of new residents. We need to make sure that we have the transportation infrastructure in place to handle those residents, however they choose to get around. And also secondarily, as is referenced in the motion, that we have asked the province to upload both of these highways as to the provincial highway system, and we can't do that without having the information that's needed for the province to consider that. So I think there's very valid reasons from a citywide perspective and also from a mountain perspective to continue with this important work. And I'll just add that the link is not the Red Hill Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danko. Councillor Maureen Wilson as a second-time speaker.
Thank you. I had interpreted the motion, and I don't want to belabor it, back to Councillor Crutch's point, as that very point to date. So because the work was paused, the conditions for pause are still at play, but staff are reporting back with this new council to inform us of what work has been completed to date. And I'm just seeking assurance from the mover, probably, that was the intent of the motion, so that this new body can have a good view of the work that has been done to date. Through the chair.
Thank you. And through the chair, I guess putting a follow-up item in here maybe would have made things easier. But yes, you're right. We're going to bring forward all the work that's been done to now and what it tells us. And then I will give everybody a heads up from that report. You will most likely see an additional motion from me saying, let's unpause it. Let's keep moving the link. And again, as John Paul Danko, Councillor Danko said, if we need to separate the two roadways, we will, in regards to the JSB conversation. The JSB conversation obviously will continue, but Q1, we get the report back of all the work that's been done up till now. I will probably follow up that work with an additional motion that will talk about finalizing any work staff says they need, and then continuing down the path so everybody has the information and the ability to make a decision one way or another. Sorry, thank you.
Councillor Beattie is a first-time speaker.
Thank you, and I think I got in there just too late, and thank you to Councillor Wilson and Councillor Mike Spatafora for that summary, because I think that's how I interpreted the motion. I just wanted to make sure, and it's been spelled out quite succinctly. I think that this is a critical infrastructure piece for the entire city. I can tell you that residents and businesses in the Ward 10 community, and I'm sure all communities across the city, need to have an understanding of how this critical piece works. We rely on it for goods movement. We rely on it for employment. I'm happy to see that the conversation is continuing, and we'll look forward to seeing this report come back so that this term of council can get eyes on where we are and where we're going. Thank you.
And with no one else sneaking on, we can go to the vote. And that motion carries 12-0. Councillor Spatafora, not quite giving the chair back to you. It looks like you're up again with 12.2, improvements to the Mark Anthony Graham Olympic Park, 984 Mohawk Road West. Councillor Spatafora, are you able to introduce your motion and your seconder?
Thank you, Chair Wilson. It's moved by myself, seconded again by Councillor Francis. Councillor Jackson was also to be the seconder of this motion. So just a quick summary on this motion. There was a previous motion for a park to have lighting in my ward. It was William McCullough Park. There's a project ID in the motion and the cost that was set aside for that. After consultation with staff and with some of our user groups, we've made the decision to try to transfer that money and that project to a different park in the ward, which is Mark Anthony Graham Olympic Park. And I'll read that therefore be it resolved that the feasibility review of sport lighting for the ball diamonds at Mark Anthony Graham Olympic Park, 948 Mohawk Road, West Hamilton, be funded from the previously approved William McCullough Park baseball diamond sport lighting, PID number 424-2309145 from the Ward 14 Capital Reinvestment Reserve, number 108064, at an upset limit including contingencies not to exceed $300,000. That the pending outcome of the feasibility study, and if it's determined that the lighting is feasible at Olympic Park, a future funding request to execute these works will be brought forward through the respective capital budget process, and that the GM of Public Works be designated to and authorized and direct to approve all agreements and documents satisfactory to the city solicitor related to the feasibility review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spatafora. We do have currently just one person on the speakers list, Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. I'm supportive of the motion. I'm just trying to understand, however, the implications of B. A future funding request to execute these works will be brought forward through the capital budget process. And the reason I'm trying to understand this is we all know that we have some deficits, if you will, with respect to our parks infrastructure, including lighting. I can share with you that there is a historically well-used baseball diamond in Victoria Park. The lighting was so compromised that they had to take it down. And now the need sits within that capital waiting list, if you will, because the cost is considerable and the park is used by residents from across the city. So my question, Chair, is the implications of this once the feasibility is completed. Is the understanding of the process that it gets in line with all the other outstanding asks, or how does that work through the chair?
I'm assuming this is going to go to Director Graham.
Just a comment before I went to Director Graham, if that was okay. So the biggest difference in the two parks is the one park, and Director Graham could probably get more details. The one park has Hydro One property, and that's why if this was the other park, we would have just put the lights up. But we got to do the feasibility due to Hydro One, but Director Graham could probably give a little more information on that.
Yeah, I think the question just from Councillor Maureen Wilson was about Clause B, and that once the feasibility is done, it gets referred to the budget. What does that mean given backlogs referral? Like, how does that actually show up in the budget? How are staff interpreting that? And I'm seeing I've paraphrased that correctly.
Yes.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Yeah, all of our capital projects are evaluated for priority based on need, historical use, all of the other factors. So this, my understanding and intent for this would be that this project, if funded from city block funding, would be reviewed alongside the other projects and scheduled accordingly. If there was a separate other funding source available, then we could possibly proceed with that project in advance of that. But knowing the intent of the councillor's question was we have limited funds, we've got lots of need, we've got a schedule of projects. This would, in my understanding, if funded from the block, get in line with all of the rest of those projects.
With no other questions on the speakers list, we can go to the vote.
Councillor Pauls, are you able to vote?
And that carries 12-0. The chair is back to you for the rest of the meeting, Councillor Spatafora.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wilson. Moving on to 12.3, improvements to Eastwood Park, 111 Burlington Street East, Hamilton, and Ward 2. Councillor Credge, please introduce your motion, and do you have a seconder?
I do. My seconder is Councillor Maureen Wilson. And this is to, more baseball, just for the record, so everyone knows. This is to improve the ball diamonds at Eastwood Park. Right now, they don't have proper containment cages for balls going different directions. There's not an accessible path right now either that's protected, so that unfortunately what's happening is people are playing in the park and it's creating all kinds of conflicts. So we're just trying to reconfigure it slightly and improve it so that everybody can continue to use this park to play softball. That's the motion. Thanks.
I don't see anyone on the speakers list, so we'll go to the vote. The vote is up. And that carries 10-0. Thank you. 12.4, support for expansion of the Riverdale Community Garden in Ward 5. Councillor Francis, please introduce your motion and your seconder.
Thank you very much. It's moved by myself, second by Councillor Beatty. Support for expansion of the Riverdale Community Garden in Ward 5. Therefore, be it resolved that the costs associated with the expansion of the Riverdale Community Garden to enable the establishment of 12 new garden beds, including a Three Sisters Indigenous garden bed, the purchase and installation of a new garden shed, the installation of hydro for lighting, and to power/recharge garden tools, the purchase of additional composters for the garden, lawnmower trimmer, large compost area, and the upgrade of the water main that services the garden be funded from the Ward 5 capital discretionary account number 330210950 in the amount of $9,000, and account number 330230950 in the amount of $21,000. There's a typo there, but it's $21,000 at an upset limit, including contingency not to exceed $30,000. I do want to thank Director Lukasik for helping with this motion. This community garden, which I visited at their year-end potluck about 6 weeks ago. It's become a fantastic addition to the community and a success story. I'm excited to see it expanded, and everyone's looking forward to it. So looking for committee's approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. Councillor Beatty, go ahead.
Just really quickly, Chair, wanted to thank Councillor Francis for allowing me to second this. We've had tremendous success with our own community garden in the Ward 10 community. Stony Creek Community Garden was rebooted this year with a little investment from the Ward 10 office, non-property tax account, I think, was used for this investment. So it's really exciting to see these kinds of projects coming forward in these days of food insecurity, allowing people the opportunity to grow their own food and participate in a lot of the beneficial social aspects that come with gardening, food production at a very, very local level. So I'm enthusiastically supportive of this, and I'm sure all members are and will be. And it obviously gives me some ideas and a template perhaps of future investment in our own Stony Creek Community Garden in Ward 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beatty. Councillor Kassar.
As Councillor Beatty predicted, also enthusiastically supportive for all the reasons he mentioned. Just one clarification question around the funding source. The first account has a description and a number. The second one just has a number. I assume that's just another Ward 5 account to just for transparency, if we know what that is.
Councillor Francis.
Apologies. Yeah, I was working with staff on this, so that's my understanding of it as well, that it's just the other discretionary account that I have access to in Ward 5.
Thank you. No one else on the speakers list. We'll go to the vote. Thumbs up from Councillor McMeekin. Thumbs up from Councillor Pauls. And Councillor Wang, thumbs up. And that carries 11-0. Thank you. 12.5, funding for the integrated meeting and sound equipment at Magnolia Hall, Ward 2. Councillor Crutch, please introduce your motion and your seconder.
Thanks very much. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kassar, and this is to ensure that we have good sound equipment over at Magnolia Hall. We spent a fortune restoring that building and making sure that it's going to be available to the community. Now we need to make sure it's accessible to them as well. So making sure that we have assistive devices, that we have a good audio visual setup so that it's simple and easy for community members who want to go in there and hold meetings. So that's the funding to do that. And thanks to staff for helping to put this together.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm not seeing anyone on the speakers list, so we'll move to the vote. Thumbs up from Councillor McMeekin. Councillor Pauls as well. And that carries 11-0. Thank you. Moving on to notices of motion. 13.1, process used to inform the city's planning, execution, and communication of major infrastructure works. Councillor Maureen Wilson, please introduce your notice of motion.
Thank you, Chair. This will stay as a notice, and it is requesting that Public Works staff report back in the early new year on the process that is used by the city when we are planning and executing infrastructure works and how we communicate in that regard. Thank you. And I do have another notice of motion at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. We're going to go to Councillor Francis for a notice, and then I'll come back to you for your final notice. Councillor Francis, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Spatafor. I will leave this as a notice and deal with it in a couple of weeks so everyone has it. If anyone's got any suggestions, reach out to me in the next couple of weeks here. I'll read it out real quick. Feasibility study for the relocation of the Kenora Transfer Station, Ward 5, whereas the City of Hamilton owns and operates 3 community recycling centers and transfer stations used to accept, consolidate, and transfer waste collected from eligible sources, and whereas the City of Hamilton owns and operates the Kenora Community Recycling Center and Transfer Station located at 460 Kenora Avenue, Hamilton, and whereas the City of Hamilton has the Centennial Neighborhood Secondary Plan, which its purpose is to create a long-term land use plan which capitalizes on planned major transit improvements and provides guidance for built form and public infrastructure improvements, and whereas the proximity of odors and environmental impacts from the Kenora Transfer Station is detrimental to economic development and growth spurred from the new Centennial GO Station. Therefore, be it resolved, A, that waste management staff be directed to conduct a feasibility study to examine the opportunity of relocating the Kenora Transfer Station, operations only, leaving the Community Recycling Center, and report back to Public Works Committee, including potential next steps and costs in Q3 2025. B, that real estate staff examine the feasibility of utilizing the portion of the property that contains the Kenora Transfer Station operations for land opportunities for redevelopment, potential land swap opportunities, affordable housing opportunities, and potential cost recovery of land disposition, and report back to Planning Committee with options in Q3 2025. And I will move that in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. Back to you, Councillor Maureen Wilson, for your notice of motion.
Thank you, Chair. This is a follow-up with respect to the interface of technology and efficiencies in our operations. My understanding when we had this discussion about the solar bins was that staff, I thought I heard that they were having some discussions to this end, so it's just formalizing that. The notice is that staff be requested to report on the feasibility of solar waste bins along roadside locations with the goal of achieving operational and capital efficiencies and cost savings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other notices of motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to general information. 14.1, amendments to the outstanding business list. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the amendments to the OBL? Councillor Wang, Councillor McMeekin. Hopefully no discussion. We'll move on to the vote. The vote is up. That carries 11-0. Thank you. Any other items of general information or other business? Seeing none, we'll move on to adjournment. May I please have a mover and seconder to adjourn today's meeting? Councillor Beatty. Councillor Wang. We'll go to the vote. The vote is up. Councillor McMeekin is a thumbs up. And that carries 11-0. Thank you, committee members. Thank you, clerks. Thank you, staff. Enjoy a couple more hours and see you in a few.